You've made it to the last week of the course. Congratulations on making it this far. What a term at Fuller this has been, mostly because of the season that we are navigating, especially in the United States, really in the whole world. And I hope that as we come to the end of this epic letter, that you are moved by the gospel of the Apostle Paul, the gospel for which he was set apart as a slave to God's justice as revealed in Jesus the Messiah. I hope that you're moved by this gospel, especially because of how much it resonates with our moment, since this human being at the heart of Paul's gospel, who is the revelation of God's self, lived such a life that he drew the fire of the authorities of his day, who were invested in an oppressive political order, and so found himself before corrupt authorities and finally executed like a slave in one of the provinces of this Roman Empire that Rome occupied. He died of asphyxiation on that cross, unable to breathe. He died crying out to his parent for help. And somehow, this is the life, the body, through whom God's power has been revealed in the world. We know because God raised that body from among the dead, and the Spirit, that is God's power to raise bodies like that from among the dead, has since been spreading in the world, at work in you, in me, among us as part of a body of people and local bodies of that body who are learning in our life together by this power of the Spirit to put to death certain deeds to which our bodies had been addicted by inheritance. And so to know among us the freedom of this justice of God, this freedom that is manifest in our commitment to one another, in our ability to share the table across abysmal differences, historic hostilities, to find the ability to listen to one another and to invest our futures in one another. Finally, to love our neighbor as ourselves, as God's law has commanded and is fulfilled in Jesus and by the power of Jesus among us and in us. I'm moved myself at the end of our course to remind us how important it is to learn truthful patterns of speech with the powerful words of this letter. These words litter the discourse of our time. Words like justice, words like law. And the gospel is about empowering people to use those words as God's word. And so to break through the crust, the stale crust of the oppressive kind of discourse of our time and the institutions that enable that oppression and that manipulate that language to hold people down and to suffocate them. And so I pray that you have heard a call, not just to be able to breathe yourself with the Spirit, but to share its breath with others, to enjoy in your own body the power to be able to weep with those who are weeping, and so to rejoice with those who are rejoicing, to live with a kind of resolve in the face of death, because we are convinced that the path to resurrection leads even through terrible suffering. So I pray that you receive the wisdom of God that comes through this letter so that you can use its words in a way that conveys the power of God's revelation. I also want to sound one final note about the way that Paul has taught us in this letter to confront oppressive power among us and in us. He's taught us to do that by mingling our bodies with one another, by pursuing a shared life so that we refuse to know a future for ourselves that is at the expense of our neighbor, especially if that neighbor is someone who is feeling the power of sin through its oppression in the structures of our society. I think that the presence of so many people on the streets today calling out for a dramatic change in the fabric of our society is a hopeful sign in a variety of ways. I hope you've been able to take part in it in one way or another. I also hope that we'll recognize the need for sustained communities of mutual commitment, of neighborly love, of ongoing encounter and reform for these cries of justice to actually reach embodiment among us and in us. And that's why I think the end of Paul's letter is so fitting, because it is about taking on the power of sin that has been defeated by Christ so that we are facing its vestiges and taking those on by the way that we live locally, by the way that we treat our neighbors, by the way that we speak with our own mouths. I don't want us to lose sight of the power of local bodily life for the healing of the human. We need the words that can be loud. We need the chants. We need the protests. We need the calls for reform. But the power of those words itself has grown from people who have borne bodily witness to their truth before now. And the power of those words will grow and become more fully embodied among us by virtue of people who put them into practice in the way that they live their lives among the people that they encounter every day. I guess one of the things I'm trying to say is that I really believe in this moment, despite all of our corruption as Christians, I believe in the church. I believe in the community to whom Paul wrote this letter, which finally includes us. And so I pray that whatever disappointments or resentments you carry with you about the church today, and there are many that are worth carrying, I hope that you are moved to invest in the life of a local gathering of people in Jesus' name. Thanks to you all, as I think this class has asked a lot of you in a demanding time. It's asked a lot of you because the readings are like super hard half the time, but it's asked a lot of you because repeatedly I've presented you with the meaning of the basic terms of the faith in a way that is sometimes unfamiliar, if not opposed, to understandings that you have held dear in the past that perhaps you brought to the course. And I want to thank you for the generosity so clearly expressed in the way you have received those proposals of mine, which of course are not just for me. You can probably imagine I don't really have any original ideas. I think I just cobble together, hopefully, ideas that I have found good from lots of people, most of whose names I don't remember. So thanks for the charity, and I hope that as you teach the gospel that Paul has presented in Romans, even if it's not teaching from Romans itself, which is very difficult, but as you teach this gospel, I hope that you'll display that magical balance of charity and firmness in the way that you call upon your neighbors, your congregation, your friends, your family to this obedience of faith that Paul has taught us about. Obviously, in terms of logistics, this last week is primarily about finishing up your advanced interpretive paper. I trust that you will take seriously the purpose of the assignment for you to develop a tone that is homiletical, we might say, in the way that you interpret your passage, meaning that your presentation of the passage should preach, it should proclaim, it should call, it should not be sterile. And that's not easy to do, I understand, but I want you to strive as you're refining your work this last week to bring out the prickly edges of Paul's gospel, especially for our moment, and to find your voice, not just in this paper, but beyond, for teaching this word from God. If you need more time beyond this Friday because of circumstances in your life associated with our time, please let me know, and I will be happy to grant you that time up to an additional week. And I'm also happy this week to offer one final round of video conferences. We do have one forum discussion. It is not very lengthy. It's designed to be relatively brief because I want you to be mostly focused on just polishing up your advanced interpretive paper. But we've had some really, I think, stimulating and meaningful conversations by video conference this term. And so I'm hoping my Wi-Fi connection where I will be will work, but I'd like to offer some video conferences on Thursday. So you'll see those for you to sign up for. I know some of you are busy with lots of things, new jobs, babies on the way, demonstrating in your streets, organizing your people. And so please feel no pressure to join one of those video conferences if it's just too much for you this week. You can just join one of the groups that has no video conference time and post your response to the final prompt. Again, one final word of thanks for your dedication to the class and for making my work at Fuller inspiring to me as a Christian.